Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching third and final part of What If Naruto was reanimated with Shinigami's power. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
So what do you intend to do? Hitsugaya sighed deeply and pinched the bridge of his nose. He then lowered his hand and looked at Shikamaru with a deep frown. Right now, my top priority is to brief my subordinates and Urahara. Dealing with the problem at hand is secondary, he said, casting a quick glance up at the four being cleaned up. I will give you the initial fallout to handle. Let those who need to know that I will address them later. When Shikamaru nodded, he pursed his lips together. He turned back to his fellow shinobi and said, "Understood." His brow furrowed. We'll take care of any straggling civilians in the aftermath until that time. He gave a firm nod and said, "Good." With that clear order to leave, the shinobi reluctantly went their separate ways. Now that was over and it didn't look like anyone else was going to bother him, he turned back to the group of Shinigami. Are you all the forces that were deployed? Kira and Hokage were sent to secure the perimeter and then set up the communication relay in case there were problems that kept you from coming back, which we thought was likely to happen. Urahara smiled and waved his fan at Hitsugaya. After that, the quantity of deployed forces was to be evaluated by the one who knows this place best. By me, you mean? His smile was even brighter this time. Exactly. As I said before, I only planned to stop by and take a look at my own. Out of curiosity, you see. He waved the fan again. Kuretsuchi is very interested in this place himself. I would give you a warning, but I believe you're already aware. Hitsugaya's forehead stood up. Yes. I'm aware. Urahara set his hands together in a clap. Fantastic. Well, with that all established, I believe you already know where you want us to touch base. Without adding any more time, Hitsugaya quickly vanished with a shunpo. Since everyone knew this was going to happen, they all followed, but Ichigo didn't hesitate to complain before he did. Kakashi watched from afar, then let out a deep sigh and went on his way. It was thankfully easy for them to get to Hitsugaya's old apartment from where they first came in. Ichigo raised an eyebrow as they walked in through the front door. The room felt crowded already with all of them in it, and there was only one chair at the table. This place is small, he said as he sat down on a kitchen counter. As Renji leaned against a wall with his arms close to his chest and laughed quietly, his lip curled a bit. And run down to hell, too. Yumachika looked down at her and sniffed angrily. Surely we're not staying here, are we, Hitsugaya? Taiko? Thank you for your kind comments, Kurosaki, Abarai. And yes, Ayasagawa, we are staying here unless you have a better idea. This was my apartment when I was alive and has been returned to my possession since my return, Hitsugaya said. It was clear that the Shinigami didn't understand what he was saying as they stared. As he moved to the fridge, Hitsugaya didn't seem to mind. He went back to the stove and pulled a pan out of a cabinet after getting a few ingredients from his restocked shelves. He started to cook quietly. The sound of cutting could be heard throughout the small space. When Rukia looked back at the captain, her eyes got bigger and she asked softly, You lived here? Hitsugaya didn't look up as he put the things he had prepared into the pan. In real life, I was born here as an orphan. I really didn't want to stay longer, but after what happened, it's clear that I upset the environment while I wasn't wearing a limiter. If I leave now without fixing that problem, I wouldn't be doing my job as a captain, he said with a curled lip. He took a break to get a rice cooker and set it up to cook. I have also learned of the means by which I was displaced from the Seirei, and the risk of it being repeated should I elect to return is too great to take that chance. Urahara waved his fan over his mouth and asked, "Oh-ho?" He said, I will talk about it in detail during the debrief. I do not intend to repeat myself. Ichigo got up from the counter and walked over to the window. He stuck his head out to see what was going on in the village. So this is where you lived? This village? He wanted to know. Hitsugaya turned down the heat with a raised brow and folded his arms as he turned back to the group of people who often hung out near his house. He quickly looked over to where Hokage and Kira were standing and said, different from the living world. I am aware, Kurosaki. Report. Kira bowed his head and said, Hitsugaya. Taiko. We observed minor hollow activity in the outskirts. Hokage said in a stern voice, they have been taken care of. They weren't even Manos. Class. It was. At least do something. It was easy to handle at the very least. Hitsugaya shut his eyes and gave a single nod. Good. There was an instance, Kira continued with a scowl, where some humans were attempting to intervene. I did not expect them to be capable of even seeing hollow, let alone utilizing combat the way they did. Such powers are almost similar to our own. The Urahara smiled. It's likely a result of the atmosphere of this world in the way the people are born, compared to that of the living world we know so well. His eyes widened slightly. Isn't that so, Hitsugaya? With a short nod, Hitsugaya went back to the stove to finish cooking the food. Indeed. Humans here are born with the ability to manipulate living energy. Chakra. Some have more than others, and their combat capability is proportional to the amount. He looked at Hisagi and Kira. You were to establish the relay? Both Hisagi and Kira said, yes. We were, Hitsugaya. Taiko, Hisagi replied. The rice cooker made a noise. Hitsugaya sighed and took the food off the stove. Eat first. Take care of that later. The captain set it down, got the rice out, and put it in a bowl. He then got more bowls and chopsticks and turned back to the stove and put the kettle in place. Matsumoto tilted her head to the side as she moved forward to take note of this. Taiko? She asked. He looked at her for a moment and raised one eyebrow. Aren't you eating? Hitsugaya picked up a cup of ramen from a cabinet and put it on the counter. That was the easy answer. As they watched him boil the water for the cup, they couldn't understand why he made that choice. In any case, the simple enough answer as to why I did not return was that I was rendered incapable of doing so. We didn't expect those words. He pulled his head up from the bowl. Incapable? Riryoku and chakra do not mix without consequences. It wasn't clear what else Hitsugaya was trying to say. Those people. Shikamaru spoke for a while. The earlier chaos was mostly under control now. People had been evacuated to safe places, and relief work was underway. Parts of the city that had been destroyed were being cleaned up, and things were mostly slowing down. He looked over and saw Ino playing with the edge of her shirt. She turned around and looked at him again. She frowned and said, they wore the same clothes as him. So. They were all dead too, weren't they? Tenten made a face. The one with the fan didn't have the same clothes as them. Yes, Shino said in a low voice, but he knew Hitsugaya. That means it's likely he was also dead, Neji said, closing his eyes. Kiba lowered his head and folded his arms. So we're really going to forget about the fact that he's Naruto? People looked at him. You know what I mean? We're just going to call him Hitsugaya, like he's not the same person we've known all our lives. We're going to bury him as the strong Sasuke. Like person he's become? Akamaru whined a little and pawed his nose as he lay flat on the ground. Choji looked at Kiba as he took the bag of chips out of his pocket. That's not it. Like he said, Hinata said softly as Kiba turned to face her. It's telling people to respect you and getting respect in return. We should respect his choices. At that moment, I forgot to respect his choices. I was just shocked that he was going to stay. Lee threw his arm over his face and clenched his other fist tightly in the air. Tears were running down his face. I must apologize to him the next time I see him. Well, Shikamaru told me quietly, you're apparently getting that chance. What I don't yet understand is why that's so suddenly changed. She now looked at Shikamaru. Huh? Neji gave a slow nod. He's right. Hitsugaya has been so intent on leaving the moment he could, and yet now his decision on the matter has been sharply reversed. Something changed. Shikamaru took a stop. How annoying. He already told us part of the reason why. He changed the mood. He sighed and rubbed his temples. With how he has asserted that it is part of his duty to protect the balance between the living and the dead, these Hollow are probably involved in this balance. Since they've never shown up before now, it means. As he looked at Neji, both of their eyes grew wide with shock. That he has business to complete here. Exactly. It looked like Hitsugaya did nothing while the other Shinigami cleaned up. Urahara rolled up his sleeves and looked around the room with awe. He asked in a soft voice, I take it you have a bigger room in this apartment? Yes, replied Hitsugaya. Probably the only place it will fit, he said, pointing to the bedroom door. The rest of the group followed him. He looked around with his arms crossed and his nose wrinkled as he did so. Ah, Hitsugaya. Taiko, this place needs some serious touch-ups. The captain laughed at that. I do not plan to stay long enough for a touch-up of this place to matter. The sooner these issues are resolved, the better. It is a temporary lodging and nothing more. He extended a hand to one of the dividers. Move the chest of drawers to clear enough room to set it up. The two of them both said, understood, and then they moved on to finish the job. In silence, Hinamori had been thinking about something. As she took everything in, she clasped her hands together even tighter. She looked at the frames that were lying on their backs until she found one that was still standing. As she took a soft breath out, she felt a weight build up in her chest. Those eyes were familiar to her. She asked in a soft voice, Hitsugaya. Kun? She stopped and looked over to see where her eyes were going. His eyes got cold, and he walked over to the picture and looked at it for a moment. She caught a glimpse of him in the glass. His face showed a hint of pain, but no one else could see it because he was facing away from them. Was that? The picture caught Matsumoto's eye when she turned to look at them, but Hitsugaya didn't let her. He laid the picture down flat and said, a memory of a person who died. That's all. With her fists clenched at her sits, she argued, your memory, Hitsugaya. Kun. Just because you're here now after so long, doesn't make it any less you. Hinamori, he said, and his tone was so flat it hurt. He looked at her, but his eyes and voice were both empty. I will not discuss it further. I am not going to go on a monologue about every intricacy of the past I have in this place. It is the past. Hikaru said, hold on, and he moved forward to grab the frame. Hitsugaya didn't see the move coming, but he really should have. He tried to move the frame away before he could, and when he failed, he swore and looked really angry. Ichiraku took a moment to look at the frame and blink. Huh. You were blonde? He closed his eyes and his brow twitched. My Riryoku seemed to influence how I presented upon death. Perhaps that was part of the reason why the Shinigami of this world sent me to Soul Society, instead of where I should have rightfully gone. And you still have those. Ichigo trailed off and then turned to look at Hitsugaya again. Why do you have those marks on your face? Hitsugaya raised an eyebrow and put his hand to his cheeks. Renji made a face and rubbed his neck. I kinda wanted to ask the same question, but I didn't want to be fucking rude about it, Ichigo. Angry, Ichigo barked back, oi. That's a good question, Renji. Hitsugaya groaned as he moved his hands to his temples and rubbed them, as if that would make him feel better from the stress he was feeling at the moment. As much as I'm influencing the environment is influencing me. I would have much rather avoided this altogether, but it can't be helped. He looked around. Still, I would rather not discuss this until a point where I do not have to explain myself twice. He looked at both of them funny. They turned away right away. Seeing his chance, Matsumoto grabbed Ichigo's frame before Hitsugaya could do anything about it. Hitsugaya hissed. Matsumoto, he said, his eyes getting very narrow. He said, oh, Taiko. You were grumpy even back then. She looked thrilled to be told this. Hitsugaya wished to stop her right there. But really, Hitsugaya. Taiko, what's with that crazy outfit? I see your sense of style has gotten better since you died, Yumachika said with a sneer. Matsumoto's other shoulder was peeked over by Ichiraku. Man, who are these other people? I mean, the pink-haired chick, she was in that group, wasn't she? The cold answer was, not related to the mission at hand. He moved to the other side of the bed and pulled Hirenmaru across his lap. If I must explain, it will be done when the time comes. However, for the time being, until the relay is set up, I will be meditating. He would need to be mentally strong to handle the tough conversation that was coming up. That's where Hitsugaya saw when he opened his eyes. He felt anger building up inside, but he quickly calmed it down. He didn't need to let his feelings get the best of him. In the long run, it would hurt him. Still, he hissed, meddlesome fox, and started walking to the cage. He didn't like how his sandals felt when they were wet. When he walked into the room, he looked up and saw the Biju staring down at him with eyes that were filled with pure evil. He looked around the huge room and asked, Kyubi, what do I owe this visit? You think I wanted you here? The fox muttered, and his anger seemed to fill the room. Hitsugaya's brow twitched as he said, "If only to shred you to pieces would I want you here, brat." "Shut up," he growled, and the water around his feet turned into rough spikes. The Kyuubi had a big grin on his face and his eyes were wide with joy. The Kyuubi teased with a big grin, "Your temper has been getting worse than usual since we got back here. You're angry at being back here." Hitsugaya clenched his fists and growled, "I don't need you to get in the way. Since I'm finally here for long enough, for some annoying reason, I'll talk, and you listen. You're attempting to gain a foothold once again and interfering with my abilities. So stop it, or I'll ensure that should I die for good, you come with me." As the water hit his ice, the beast moved, and his face went from being amused to angry. Insolent, the beast called out, "How dare you speak to me that way, human? It has nothing to do with me. You cannot control my aura after the century you spent slacking off. Nothing more, nothing less. What a pain." Hitsugaya's eyes got very narrow. "Insulting my capabilities will get you nowhere, Kyuubi," he told me. "I speak nothing," the demon said, shutting his eyes, "but the truth. You have not needed to suppress my power for so long that it's taken its toll, and you've lost control. Now that you're back here, where my chakra is naturally stronger, you can't suppress it anymore." Sounds of echoing. Wait. Sound waves? Hitsugaya turned his head and looked around. He could hear a voice that wasn't clear, and he tensed up to try to figure out where it was coming from. As the Kyuubi's chakra spread through the room, the water around him turned bright red and steamed up, melting the ice he'd made. He screamed as the water rushed over him and surrounded him. "See the proof for yourself." He screamed and opened his eyes wide. He looked around at the worried Shinigami's faces. He gasped, "Hitsugaya. Kun. You're Isa. Not just the eyes, what is that energy?" Rukia asked quickly, confused. It happened before, but... He didn't pay attention to how his muscles were burning or how his head hurt when he looked down at his clawed and red hands. He swore and hit his head. He used his own Ryatsu, which made the room colder. He shook his head and used his claws to pull out his hair. He said, "Go away, damn it," and then he squeezed his eyes shut. "Disappear. Disappear." The bubbling cloak slowly broke apart into pieces that vanished into thin air. When he opened his eyes again, they went from dull red to tired blue. Again, his whisker marks got thinner, and he groaned and scrubbed his face. Hisagi and Kira came back from the corner of the room at that very moment, and Hitsugaya woke up to see the screen in place. Kira asked Hitsugaya. Taiko in a soft voice, "Are you okay? Do you need a?" "No," he rasped, "I don't need anything. I just want everyone to stay away from me." He stood up and walked to the screen, wobbling a little. "Is it done?" Another person from the 12th Division showed up on the screen and gave the answer before anyone could properly answer. They were startled right away and grabbed their files tightly. "Oh, Hitsugaya. Taichua. Transfer me." The representative was startled even more by the cold tone, and they did so right away. Hitsugaya bowed when he saw the other captains on the screen. "So Taichu." Even though the other captains were taking their time to get to know him, Ichiraku smiled at him. "Ah, there you are, Hitsugaya. Taiko. You're looking well. Rested, at least?" He only just realized that Hitsugaya was still in his pajamas at that very moment. "I will never get over this," Hitsugaya quietly gave up, wishing more than anything that one of these idiots had actually taken the time to remind him. Although Ichigo pointed out that he was still in his pajamas, there were more important things to do at the time than changing clothes. He really thought that he had caused this to happen. He was so focused on the best way to explain everything that had happened for the debriefing that he hadn't even noticed what he was wearing. Hirinmaru was probably laughing at him because of how things were going for him. He planned to talk to Hirinmaru later. He had to pay attention and deal with the consequences for now. The teasing aside, "Good to see you well." Ichiraku called and looked happy. "You've been missing for a spell, you know, it's put us all quite in a flurry here." Hitsugaya put his head down. "I'm sorry, so Taichu. The amount of time I've been gone wasn't something I had planned. It will take a while to explain what happened, I'm afraid." Shinji smiled slightly and said, "Well, you can explain just fine. We're not going anywhere. Especially since you're in a world we've never been to." "Hey," Hitsugaya sighed. To begin this debriefing, he said, it is pertinent to explain that this world is where I had been born when I was alive. Oh? Is it true that you weren't from the living world we rule, Hitsugaya? Taiko? Mayuri asked, looking very interested. Hitsugaya clenched his fists and raised an eyebrow. He then growled under his breath. I will not let anyone try to experiment on me, Kuratsuchi, he said in a harsh voice. Oh, you say that as if the zombification incident didn't occur, said Mayuri. Hitsugaya clenched his fists even tighter and twitched his lip. In charge. In charge. It shouldn't be this hard. Take a deep breath. That's not what we're talking about right now, Hitsugaya snapped. Mayuri's face showed that she was feeling way too happy to be comforted. Even though Hitsugaya didn't know what it was, he was able to calm things down when they got tense. But I did get back memories of my life, and I've had them ever since I got over being turned into a zombie. I think that one of your experiments led to that. That's really cool. Seriously, are you sure I can't get you to let me give you a full checkup? Enough, Suifang yelled at Kuratsuchi. Taiko. You are drawing this out. Considering how it's affecting him, there's a lot more tea story we aren't going to get if you don't zip it, Shinji said softly. He cursed Hitsugaya. Was that stupid fox getting through? He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he opened them again. In the process, he saw Suifang look at Mayuri again, this time with narrowed eyes, before she turned back to Hitsugaya. Continue, Hitsugaya, Taiko. Hitsugaya said, yes. I didn't plan to go back, even though I remembered things that, legally speaking, should have been erased from my mind when I died. It's possible that the way I entered Soul Society was different from how most people do it, but that's just a guess. I was told that being dragged back to this world against my will was caused by an illegal summoning technique, which backs up what I already thought. It cut off my link to Hirenmaru for a short time, but it has since been fixed. This weakness came from the fact that chakra and Riryoku don't go together. My first thought was that the summoning made it impossible for me to create a Senkaimon, but now I know that the lack of a link between this world and Soul Society could be why I couldn't go back on my own. The Shinigami who were there fell into a deep silence. A technique to summon the dead sounds troubling, Hitsugaya. Taiko, Iba said. He looked upset and bowed his head for a moment to think. Why would they attempt to summon a captain? How is that even possible? She asked in a soft voice, her brows furrowed with worry. It took Hitsugaya a long time to sigh. By using the energy they have access to and pieces of my body to hold me in place on this plane. I was brought back because I come from this world. I am positive that I have been called back to try to get my tailed beast. There is no such thing as Soul Society in my world. He felt like someone was looking at him, and when he turned around, he saw that everyone was, both on the feed and in real life. Surprise and confusion. Unfortunately, but not a surprise. With her brows pressed, Matsumoto had her hand on her chest, and something in her mind almost seemed to connect. For sure, he didn't want to know what connections she had made. Tailed beast? Byakuya asked him in a low voice while frowning at him. He turned around to get back to the meeting. This was the part he didn't want to talk about. Putting out a sigh, he reached for his shirt and pulled it up a bit. He put his hand against his navel and focused some of his newly recovered chakra on it. When he pulled the hand back, the seal was back there. He chose not to see it. When I was born, I was used as a vessel for a beast with terrible power. This is the seal that holds us all together. Jinchuriki is what they call people like me. It made him feel bad that eyes were still on him, so he lowered his shirt. There is a group that wants to take these beasts back from their ships. I never found out what the point was in my whole life. As far as I know, the leader of this group killed me. As for whether or not anything else has been learned about their motivations while I have been away from this world, I cannot say. It was impossible to hear anything. Then Mayuri's face lit up with a big smile. That's what it is. Urahara and I both saw that, but we didn't have enough proof to be sure of what it was. How interesting. Have you just been ignoring it in a world that is so very different from the one you are in now? That frown of Hitsugaya's moved again. Yes, he said almost reluctantly. The joy in Kuratsuchi's eyes meant bad things were going to happen, and Hitsugaya didn't want anything to do with it. Suifang looked over and frowned. If this beast, as you call it, is so much trouble. Hitsugaya got angry when he heard the implication of a question. He took a slow breath to calm down, though. He had to be in charge if the Kyuubi's words were true. He should not let his feelings get the best of him. Anyone but the captain of the 12th Division could have asked that question. He just said, "I cannot be separated from the Kyuubi." For what reason? Byakuya asked in a cool way. You've never had to depend on its strength before. It looks like a lot of work for not much reward. As Urahara came into view, he let out a long sigh and snapped the fan over his face. Hitsugaya didn't move too fast or too slow. His first words were, "Just from feeling it up close, it fits perfectly with my and Kuretsuchi's hypotheses." Even when they are at odds with each other, their energy is so connected that Hitsugaya would not be able to survive if they were to be split up. Hitsugaya felt something burning in his chest and veins just hearing the ugly truth. Hitsugaya didn't care about the looks. He kept looking forward, meeting Ichiraku's wide-eyed gaze. Yes. After that, he shut his eyes. There were 9 of us at a time. I knew someone else like me. He died after being taken out. I couldn't say anything about what would happen to other people like us. As Lisa, Rose, Shinji, and Kensai all looked at each other, they were having a quiet conversation. At the same time, Zaraki growled. There a point to all this noise? He asked. Hitsugaya's eyes got very narrow. Perhaps if you paid attention, he said abruptly. Shinji spoke up, but his eyes were fixed more on Hitsugaya than he would have liked. Hey now. Don't be so tense, he said. So 9 of you, right? And they want yours so badly that they'll drag you out of the afterlife? Yes. Either all the others are dead and I am the last one left, or they were wrong to think that this ritual would make it easy to find me. His eyes got smaller. But based on what I knew before I died, the person who called me should not have been able to do it. He also shouldn't have worked with the group that wants to capture me. He sighed. There still appears to be much that I'm missing, in regards to information. Lisa finally raised her glasses and said, but it looks like you know enough to say that a simple return to Soul Society would not be smart. Hitsugaya bowed his head with a single nod. That is correct. Well. Do not turn off the relay until you can come back. Inform us often, and make your final choice about the forces you need to clean this up. The Ichiraku sighed. That's a mess. Hey Hitsugaya. Taiko, take care of yourself. Yes, sir. Hitsugaya closed his eyes when the line went away and all he could see was himself. Hisagi. Kira. Hello, Madaraim. Thanks, Ayasagawa. Let's go back to Soul Society. If reinforcements are needed, you should be ready to go back, but I don't think that will happen now that I've fully recovered. The 4 of them bowed. Rukia frowned and put her hand to her chin. Are you certain, Hitsugaya? Taiko? Hitsugaya scratched his head. Yes. I am sure. This situation needs to be handled carefully, so we need to limit our interference as much as possible to keep the world from getting worse. He took another look at the blank screen. I've already done too much damage. I don't want to keep pushing against broken glass. Urahara snapped the fan shut and said, that couldn't be helped. Hitsugaya. Taiko, would you like to open the Senkaimon as a guest? Seeing that you can now might ease your mind. When Hitsugaya did it, he wouldn't say that Urahara was right. After a short goodbye from the strange former captain, he and the other 4 went back to their room, leaving the other Shinigami there. After a moment of silence, Matsumoto put her hands together. Sue. Are you okay with taking a look around the place? Learn about how things work in the area. The captain gave Matsumoto a blank look. If you cause an altercation, I'm sending you back to Soul Society with the express order of completing all the paperwork until I return. It made her pout. Taicho, how could you do this to me? He had a twitch on his brow, but Hitsugaya felt calm. He knew exactly what Matsumoto was doing. The comfort of the familiar was nice. Kurama looked out through the cage with a sneer. It had been going on for too long. He was suffocated by this Riryoku because he had been trapped in this spiritual vessel for so long that he had been at rest. He did not know how to get out of there. He had not been able to do anything. They had still seen him. These dead people had never heard of him. These dead people who didn't remember a life like his. They could still feel him, hidden inside Hitsugaya. They still feared him and his Jinchuriki, even though they didn't know what was making them feel that way. Hiranmaru's power was, without a doubt, scary. Yes, Hitsugaya's cold personality in death could weaken even the strongest person. But he knew too well what it all came down to in the end. The beast was always there. The beast always. Always something to be afraid of with a Jinchuriki. To hate. To be by yourself. This was his third attempt to finally get rid of this bothersome being, but each time he failed. The Edo Tensei's hooks twisted the very foundations of his Jinchuriki, rooting chakra into parts of his body that no longer had it. This created the spiral that he could use to start feeding his power out again, bringing them back to a world where he was strong. Well. It was the chance he had been looking for. But someone that old had the patience to see this through. He was going to find a way to get away. Just wait a little while longer. After that, he would make every person pay. This feels a bit like overkill. Hitsugaya's forehead stood up. Yeah, because I'm still here. Watch Twitch. We all know that's bullshit, Renji. Watch Twitch. Aw? Ichigo, do you want to fuck off? Watch Twitch. As Rukia adjusted the extra cots they had borrowed from the Seirei for the 100th time, she snapped, "Oh, would you both stop it?" She looked annoyed that this dance was being done over and over again. It was clear that she was annoyed, which made him feel better that he wasn't the only one. Momo came out of the bedroom after finally changing her own clothes, just like the other kids. Hitsugaya told them not to make their clothes too flashy, so they were pretty simple. The cots had been moved out of the way, so Hitsugaya, who was sitting at the kitchen table, put down his brush before he snapped it because he was so upset. After all, this was his favorite brush. This is Kuchiba's right. I know you don't agree with the choice I made about the reinforcements, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry. The lives of my subordinates should not be wasted, and you are more than capable of handling yourselves in a fight. Hitsugaya. Taiko, there ain't nothing going on, Renji complained. Then I suggest, the captain said gently, eye twitching more, you either follow Matsumoto's lead and take to finding something to occupy yourself with, or you go and get your reports from the Seirei and get some work done. They looked at each other. It was then that they looked back at Hitsugaya. Hinamori and Rukia looked where they were looking. After arguing with Renji in silence for a while about who should ask, Ichigo let out a grumpy sigh and said, "Fuck this." He stopped beating around the bush. Come to think of it, Toshiro. Hitsugaya. You haven't left this apartment all day. Hitsugaya groaned and sighed through his teeth. He clenched his fists to show how angry he was. I didn't want to make this place aware of who I was in real life. I had to give up my personal reservations for the sake of the many, which was a bad thing. Well, you don't look like that kid in the picture, Renji said, but his words got lost. Some people in this world have a certain amount of chakra, which is life energy. People in the real world can control Ryotsu, but not in this world. That might depend on how the living world and soul society are linked, but he shook his head, putting that idea to rest. Anyway. By using these techniques, different techniques were created, allowing for a wide range of combat and stealth skills. This has something to do with those clones, right? Renji, Rukia and Hinamori all looked at Ichigo with different amounts of confusion. Clones? He asked Hinamori. Yes, replied Hitsugaya. The Shadow Clone Jutsu is the name of the skill. It is not allowed to be done. He sighed and stood up from the kitchen table, looking at Hinamori in particular. She looked like she was going to say something about how the technique was illegal. All shinobi are able to make fake copies of themselves. It's harder to make clones that need a certain amount of substance. There were strict rules against the Shadow Clone Jutsu because it was so easy for someone to die if they weren't ready for it. Dear Hitsugaya. Do not tell me that. A sigh was let out by Hitsugaya. This is Hinamori. It was my signature move in real life. With Shadow Clone Jutsu, the user's power will be split evenly between the clones and the real person. The fact that it is so deadly is because many shinobi don't have the reserves. That's just how I was made as a Jinchuriki, though. So by using that technique, Rukia said slowly, her eyes widening in shock. You showed who you are. To show that he was right, Hitsugaya gave a firm nod. Ichigo creased his brow. Alright. Well. I'm going to check things out. Look at how different this place is from home. A short nod was all Hitsugaya gave. Don't make trouble. Thrown out. Hiroshige snapped, Oi. As Hitsugaya picked up the last piece of paper he'd finished. That wasn't an invitation to fire me. I'm not even your subordinate. Hey, Toshiro. Hitsugaya didn't pay any attention to him as he shut the bedroom door behind him. Man, what a pain, Renji said. He looked at Renji with a mean look. I should have stayed behind, Rukia said right away. She let out a soft sigh. So, Kuchiki-san, you would have left me alone with them, she said in a soft voice. It was true. She was worried about Hitsugaya. Even though he seemed happy when they were finally able to put on a limiter and get a Gigai after some of their reinforcements came back, he was still upset about something. He had, however, become closed off again, and she was having a hard time trying to figure out what was wrong. There was a growl in Renji's stomach. He let out a shocked groan. Man, I hope this food is the same. It kind of looks like the Soul Society. Hitsugaya cooked normal food, Renji, Rukia told him sternly, noticing the strange looks they were getting from some villagers who were lost. Hinamori made a face when he heard people whispering. She got hints about a name. That was the name she remembered the humans calling Hitsugaya. She was interested in Naruto and how much of that person stayed in her childhood friend. Yes, but that's because his name is Hitsugaya. Since he's from here, he would know how to make things with the things they have here. That doesn't mean they make it the same way. Take a look. Rukia was complaining about how badly Renji could handle things. People in the village were now paying a little more attention to them, and Ichigo looked around. He gave Renji a hard elbow, which made the other man scream in anger. What was that for? He growled. After giving him another elbow and a sharp look, Rukia turned to look at the people on the street. Okay, fine. Let's get some food. Oh. You're there. When the four looked in the direction of the call, they saw Matsumoto. With a smile on her face, she waved. And Rukia made a face. She frowned and gave Rukia a single side eye before turning her attention back to Matsumoto. Where did you get the money for all that? When Hinamori asked her a question, Matsumoto blinked and looked at the bags that were hanging off her arms. Then she smiled big. Oh, I asked Taiko about it before I left. Rukia didn't seem to be sure. I swear I did. She put her arms together. This action was also repeated by Hinamori. Great, that's fine. I borrowed some of the money he had on hand and wrote a note. Oh, I didn't spend it all. I was going to get you two and go shopping for new things for you too. The clothes are so much fun, and everyone loves fishnets here. She sighed. I still wonder where some of these people get those quaint little bands with the plates on them. I think it'd make a cute little necktie, though I wonder if you can get them with different symbols. But no one sells them. That was getting some looks for sure. More firmly, Hinamori looked around. She blinked when she saw what looked like a ramen shop. She yelled, food. Right away, quickly grabbing Rukia's wrist and pulling her along. She also grabbed Matsumoto's arm. Abarai. Kun was hungry, so let's get something to eat. Move it. It looks like a ramen shop. Finally, they were out of sight of Snoops. A young woman smiled at them and said, Welcome to Ramen Ichiraku. A bigger man was working at the cooking stations while she talked. What can we get for you all? Hinamori sat down. Since we're new here, we may need a second. Thanks a lot. Aw. That's great to have you. My name is Tucci. This is Ayame, my daughter. Ichigo slowly said, Hold on, and looked at the wall. What's so special about Uzumaki Naruto? Who is that? As the other Shinigami looked over, the name caught their attention. For some reason, they remembered what people had called Hitsugaya. Oh, you must be new, Tucci, the man said. When asked the question, he looked even older and his shoulders sagged in sadness. Ayame, the woman, frowned. We loved Naruto so much. He was a little kid when my dad and I met. You were a kid, too, Ayame, not much older than him, Tucci told her in a soft voice. He smiled at the group as he looked at them. Naruto was a good child. Kind of a lonely kid. Do you know about the attack? Tucci sighed when they looked at each other with blank looks. Those of you who are not from here, I find it strange that you didn't know about it even back then. The Kyuubi attacked the village 20 years ago. The fox with 9 tails. What a terrible night it was. A lot of people died. At the time, the 4th Hokage was our leader. He gave his life to turn the beast into a baby. Naruto was that little boy. Because he was an orphan, he was always treated badly. It looked like nobody knew that the kid wasn't the beast. It looked like Hitsugaya wouldn't want them to know this. But Tucci told the story with sincerity, and by this time, everyone was really interested in it. When Ayame looked at her dad, he rubbed his eyes. The first time I really saw Naruto was when he looked into my shop. Kid's early years were mostly spent running around the village and getting into trouble. He couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. It's hard to remember his age now because he was always there, but he was weak and small. That day it poured down rain, and he was drenched. He ran away when I tried to wave him in, but he stopped when he realized I wasn't trying to push him away or chase him. That really was the worst part for me, you know? He was a kid. He didn't have any family, though. Not any friends. Everyone was against him. I let him dry off and gave him a bowl of ramen for free. He was our best customer after that. I loved him so much. To drop him. Tucci turned away and took a moment to breathe. He put his hand over his eyes. Ayame decided to end the reflection when she saw this, and the Shinigami's faces showed that they didn't understand what had happened. He died to keep this village safe. He left with the Kyuubi with him. Really, all we can do is keep what he loved alive in our shop. We wish we could do more. We can only do this, but it's not enough. There you have it, the Uzumaki Naruto special. His favorite food. A big bowl of miso ramen with extra chashu. He glared at the table with shaky hands. He looked away and clenched his teeth like he was going to say something. Hinamori looked very sad. Then we'll take the Uzumaki Naruto special, Matsumoto said with a smile. But even with everything, the story hurt her too. He must have been a really special kid. He was, Tucci said with love. He was a naughty kid who sometimes tried to get attention, but he had this way about him that you hear a lot around here. He was always best at understanding other people. Even though he was going through the worst, he cared. He really cared. He was filled with the will of fire. Ayame gave Tucci a soft smile as she brought 5 big bowls of food. Tucci began putting the ingredients on plates. And, of course, she helped get everything ready. The big bowls were then put in front of each of them one by one. Thank you for the food. After that, they dug in. Renji was very happy to find that the food was the same as food in the human world, and the ramen tasted great too. The men ate more slowly than the women, but he and Ichigo ate very quickly. Matsumoto was deep in thought, and as she slowly ate her bowl, she kept her face blank. If this Naruto and Hitsugaya really were the same person, it showed how people usually talk to him in a bad way. She thought about the shopkeeper in Junranen and how rude he had been to Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya may have had to deal with that attitude for a long time, but she hadn't thought about that. From the look on Hinamori's face, it was clear that it wasn't just one time. She thought about whether that was how she felt about him that day. Even though the spiritual pressure he put out was a part of it, it was more about the beast. Hinamori was also quiet while she ate her own ramen. That doesn't mean it was bad. In fact, it was great. She could see why Hitsugaya might have liked it in real life because it was so tasty. For an orphan who had nothing and no one to help him, this hearty bowl would have been a blessing. She thought of Shiro-chan, who was young, grumpy, and mischievous in his own way. He was throwing watermelon seeds at everyone who walked by. She thought about what he might have been like if he had had a little more time, if she hadn't left for the academy so quickly, and if she had been more on his side. Oi, Tucci-san. When a person he knew stepped in, the man in question looked up and his face softened. The 5 people looked over and saw a teenager with curly brown hair and one of those headbands that Matsumoto had said he wanted on his forehead. Hello there. Yesterday, I was shocked to see that you weren't there. Your usual time to come in is after the memorial. I was trying to figure out what Naruto's old team was doing, they all went missing, and so did the Cage too. Ayame took a look. How do you know this? Oh, I just heard people talking about it. Lady Tsunade was trying to keep the Cage's group from looking for him, Konohamaru said. Shizune was also looking for Sakura and Ino. He took a look. Who are they? They said they were foreigners, Tucci said. I'm humbled to have their patronage, so try not to bother them too much. Alright, so anyway, did you see earlier today? Yes, Naruto was here. He looked out for us. Ichigo got a choke on his ramen. Rukia hit him on the back, which made Ayame's face turn angry. That's not funny, she told him out loud. Don't joke about that. I mean it. Everyone is talking about it. When the order to leave was sent because of that attack. It was my turn to help when I saw many shadow copies of the same person. The person who killed those weird monsters. Naruto was there. Tucci frowned and said, "We went to the cellar for that, but that sounds. It seems too good to be true." Konohamaru, "Those are just rumors," Ayame said, her face showing that she was angry. "He died." "Yes. He did it. Hitsugaya only let people move around on the rooftops. He got out of his Gigai to help with his current project. While he was gone, he left the mod soul to clean the apartment. He was angry and frustrated, but he kept his mind on the task at hand to take his mind off of it. It would only make Kyuubi stronger. He couldn't do that because he had a limiter on, so he had to get better at controlling his feelings. Still, though. He let out a low sigh when he got to the administrative building where the Hokage's office was. He went into the building. He decided that this was something he felt bad about, and right away there was complete silence. One Junin said. Hitsugaya's forehead stood up. "I need to talk to Lady Hokage," he said sternly, making sure his back and shoulders were straight. His Haori didn't mean anything to the people present, so his posture and power were important ways to show his rank. "The incident this morning needs to be discussed." Another Junin stopped, and her face turned frowny. He tensed up as he watched the woman's posture change. It was as if she had thrown out the rumors and what she had seen and instead seen him as a fake. Currently she's... Hitsugaya looked quickly at the new voice that cut him off. "Shizune." She jumped. "Ladies, Lady Tsunade has been waiting for you. I will see you right to her." With a bow of his head, Hitsugaya followed her instead. He didn't pay attention to the looks, whispers, or looks at Hirinmaru on his back. He didn't pay attention to anything but the way forward. While she held Taunton tight to her chest, Shizune didn't say a word. He didn't try to make the silence better. Enter. The door was opened by Shizune. "He's arrived, Lady Tsunade." Hitsugaya was then able to come in and close the door behind him. She then moved out of the way. "Lady Tsunade," Hitsugaya said with a short bow. Kakashi and Yamato were standing on either side of the desk from where the woman was standing. "Hitsugaya, good to see you well." Hitsugaya's surprise was barely visible in the way his eyes widened. "Kakashi kept me informed." "I see. I think you are to thank for making me feel more stable when I first came back to this world." "And Sakura," Tsunade added. "But that has nothing to do with the subject at hand. I think that was around this morning." Hitsugaya gave a short nod. "An incident that is directly a consequence of my being stranded in this world. A more detailed explanation, if you have it now, would be appreciated," Kakashi said. "Hey," Hitsugaya sighed. "When I died, the Shinigami of this world took me to a different world. After getting some information from the scientific division, I found out that taking the Kyuubi out of this world caused a change in the laws of time and space between our worlds. It seems like time has moved much more slowly here than it has for me. My chakra changed into Riryoku in that world. The change from living to dying. Since then, my memories have been erased by that change." When Tsunade said, "I see," she sat down and sternly put her hands over her mouth. "I was called by nature to use this technique, which is called Edo Tensai. I was pulled to this world without any limits. The technique messed up my energy, making it much weaker, and it even started to change its nature. But as time went on and I got better, no one could stop my power. In a strict sense, the attack this morning was caused by my presence. People who are still alive can't hurt those things, which is why they are called hollow. Part of my organization's job is to clean them up and send them to the cycle. They are interested in Riryoku, and as a high-ranking official, I have a lot of it. I'm sorry that I put the village in danger." This time, he bowed while kneeling. "Rise." He did that. Hitsugaya. Tsunade took a deep breath and looked at him. "So, what do you think we should do about this? This hollow being drawn here by your presence, as well as the Edo Tensai incident. Since then, I've talked to my organization, and I have enough extra help to handle any repeat incidents. We will stay for a while to watch what's going on and figure out how much damage my presence is doing. If it's not too much, we will go back to the Soul Society without getting in the way of anything else. It's not our business to get involved with the lives of the living." He saw that the line on her forehead got deeper. His sigh was followed by the words, as for the Edo Tensei incident. That's something that needs to be stopped before it happens again. The first time someone tried to bind me, Hiranmaru stopped them, but it still made me feel strange. There is no way I want it to happen again because it will continue to hurt both your world and mine. Kakashi and Yamato both had great poker faces. He did too, though. I and my forces will stay here until all people who use this technique are killed. We would really appreciate any information you can give us about this. In addition, I will try to destroy any more evidence of my first ship that could be used to make this technique work. His eyes got smaller. So what did you do with my body? He died. Yes. He did it. The Shinigami's attention was drawn right away to the new voice. Taiko. Matsumoto called out and put up her hand. Come on, have some ramen. Hitsugaya's eyes got very narrow. I'd much rather discuss why you took my money with a thank you note and then bought clothes with it. That's the note you left him? Renji let out a loud alarm call. Hey, Taiko, hurry up. You wouldn't want us to go hungry and not fit in, would you? When Hitsugaya tried to argue, Konohamaru stepped in front of him and cut him off. If it made him a little mad that Konohamaru was now a little taller than him, he didn't show it. At the same time, Konohamaru looked at him. Your face. Hitsugaya let out a gruff sigh of frustration. I guess I can't help it. Even though I had to leave my apartment for work, I know I can't avoid being seen in this situation. Hey there, Konohamaru. It's been a while. When Konohamaru choked, he felt pain, confusion, and relief all at the same time. Naruto. To which Hitsugaya simply replied, I was once. He looked over at Tucci and Ayame and softened his look. Big bowl of miso ramen with extra chashu. I'd like 3. Tucci. San, Ayame. San, it's been a while. Tucci's face broke into tears of pain and happiness. Naruto. Hitsugaya had never grown to enjoy being hugged. Even after his memories came back, this hadn't changed. When it got to Konohamaru, though, it felt different. He let him. He kept quiet and looked over Konohamaru's shoulder at Tucci and Ayame. The only sound he could hear was Konohamaru crying. You were gone. I don't get it, Ayame said in a low voice. Hey, Hitsugaya sighed. Wow, what a situation. I'm dead. You can't come back from the dead, and I didn't. The high level of energy in this area is what lets you see me right now. But I think you too, Tucci. San and Ayame. San, think I don't look normal? They looked at him and then slowly nodded. You're see-through, Tucci said. Hitsugaya said, yes. Because I am dead. They looked at each other as Konohamaru hugged his robes tighter. You didn't deserve to die, Konohamaru said with sadness. You didn't deserve that. It wasn't your job to leave. I guess the sighing was going to keep going today, right? They were alive, though. They were people. He had to wait a little longer. I had no choice. However, I'm okay with going to heaven. Don't cry over what has already been done. He slowly moved away from Konohamaru and looked at the 3 bowls that were set up on the counter. I imagine you would like to get some food as well. Konohamaru looked at him and rubbed his eyes. With you, Naruto. He was tired and the sighing didn't look like it would stop anytime soon. He turned his attention from the Shinigami's looks to the ones he was getting from them. He pointed right at them. Not a word. When the 3 living people looked at him with doubt, he reluctantly agreed to do what they asked. Those people work for me. I cannot remember things. My name is Hitsugaya Toshiro now. Ichiro pointed his chopsticks at Hitsugaya and said, I'm not your subordinate. I'm just helping, Toshiro. That's Hitsugaya. Taiko to you. In spite of everything, even the strange way the other people kept looking at him, he sat back at ramen Ichiraku and ate 3 big bowls of food while Konohamaru talked to him about his Rasengan training. Somehow, it was nice. Hitsugaya let out a happy sigh as he put bowl number 3 down on the counter having finished it. Nothing compares. Ichigo was the first one to ask, how did you do that? Hitsugaya turned to look at Ichigo and raised an eyebrow. His face was blank. He said, I used my mouth. Then Ichigo looked at the other people. Hinamori just shrugged. He was able to do that with watermelon all the time in Junranen, she said plainly. He'd spit the watermelon seeds at people. His firm answer was, because they annoyed me. But, I don't see why it's so impressive. How fast? Not least because you're so little. The eyes of Hitsugaya moved. I am average. He was glad to have the limiter because it meant he didn't have to keep an eye on his Ryotsu all the time. But as he stared at Ichigo and dared him to say anything, the air felt a little cooler around him. It's clear that Ichigo didn't know about the impending danger. Average for a... Rukia grabbed Ichigo by the ear and pulled it hard. Don't you have any tact? Hitsugaya took the time to find his wallet and count out the money to pay for their food while Ichigo yelled and tried to get the iron grip off of his ear. At least someone cared about them. But still. Tucci told Hitsugaya right away, you don't need to pay, and held out his hand to stop him from giving the money. He raised an eyebrow and looked up. But. Tucci said, being here with you is payment enough for all the good things you've done for this village. He had a soft smile on his face. You've been dearly missed. Hitsugaya made a bigger frown. I get it, Tucci-san. You want to give this meal away for free. Thank you very much. But you've done so much for me that I can't just accept that. It was our choice. It's free. Ayame held out. Hitsugaya didn't want to give up, so he left some money on the counter and looked Ayame straight in the eye as he did it. Then I'm leaving a tip. He took a quick look down the table at Renji, Ichigo, Rukia, Hinamori, and Matsumoto, who were all still working on their ramen. I'll be back at the apartment when you're all done with your free time. I've had enough of people for the day, and I have a lot to do and think about in the days to come. He'd rather take a nap than deal with this any longer. He stood up to leave, but stopped when someone pulled on his sleeve. When he was done, he looked over at Konohamaru, who had mostly died down to silence. The teen turned to him. Are you going already, big bro? Big bro? Before turning back to Konohamaru, Hitsugaya gave Renji a firm look and let his eye twitch once. Yes. I need to get some work done. Also, don't tell anyone that I'm back. I'm only here for a short time. But everyone knows. It's annoying. He turned his head away and pursed his lips. I know that I can't hide the fact that I'm here. I didn't want to be so visible, but the situation required it. That doesn't mean I'm back. The dead don't belong with the living. Konohamaru got angry about this. But I still want to do so many things with you. I still need to learn more from you. Hitsugaya shut his eyes. I'm no longer able to teach you. You're alive. I'm no longer alive. We are now very different in many ways. He went outside and toward the door to leave. He was determined to leave this place before things got worse. Thank you once more for the meal. Saying goodbye. Oreo no jutsu. Oh. Oh no. No way, no way. All Hitsugaya could hear were the sputtering sounds of Renji and Ichigo. Then he heard Hinamori and Rukia expressing different levels of shock. He closed his eyes, feeling so ashamed. He wouldn't turn around. Not right now. Without a doubt not. Things he did in the past were following him around. This is what will ruin him. His reputation and hard work are in bad shape. Hello there. Get rid of that right now. Not in our eat. In. Ayame yelled. Well, that got you to stop leaving, huh? Konohamaru asked in his Henjeo voice. Big brother Naruto, I see you still know your own work. It was Hitsugaya who put his face in his hands. He was out of options. But really, Taiko, I had no idea you had this side. I feel so wise now. He was going to hell. This has been going on since they left. Always yelling, jabbing, and slandering. It was really annoying. His rank didn't matter anymore because of the childish things he did to get attention. Mr. Matsumoto. One last time. I was 13 years old, a real child, and it was for making adults laugh. I'm not going to use it again. She shook his hand and pouted at him. Come on, you can do more with it, right? Maybe a group of hot guys? Like a backwards harem. No. I definitely didn't expect that from you, Renji said as he rubbed the hand. Shaped mark on his face that was about the size of a Rukia. When Ichigo rubbed his face, he saw a handprint that looked like a mirror image. Really? Coming from nowhere at all. He already said it was made up in real life, and he's a different person now, Rukia said with anger. It looked like she was the only one who didn't want to accept this news any further than necessary. Certainly a more mature person than he once was. Ichigo moaned, or maybe he's just better at hiding it, it's a thing for kids his age to be. Hitsugaya turned on his heel, which was at the end of his rope. I'm not a child. My name is Toshiro Hitsugaya and I am the captain of the 10th Division. Anything I did in life doesn't matter to the person I am now, and I haven't had living memories in over 100 years. That is something you should keep in mind. Hinamori gently tapped Hitsugaya on the shoulder. He had hoped that Hinamori would finally get it, but then. It's okay to be embarrassed about it, Shiro-chan. He was embarrassed and hissed, it's Hitsugaya, and that was more than 100 years ago. He looked at Rukia and pointed at her. She quickly blinked. Yes, Kuchiki. Right now, the only person I'm not mad at is you. You're in charge until I get back to my apartment. I'll no longer put up with this. Taiko. Matsumoto cried out in shock. She got a mean look from Hitsugaya. Certainly not. I am not going to listen to what you have to say. Thrown out. He quickly got away with a shunpo before anyone else could say anything else. Hang on, is he okay? Rukia hit Renji over the head, but she didn't leave another mark on his face. It was a genuine question. Hinamori was worried now. I didn't. He's really worked up about this, I was trying to console him but I think he took it the wrong way. Matsumoto frowned as he looked at the path Hitsugaya had taken to get away from the situation. He wouldn't normally get so angry about something like this. It seemed off. He would definitely yell and act angry, but as he left, he looked off. He didn't really care about what happened anymore, so why take it so personally? She stopped moving. Soon, Ichigo blinked and turned on his heel. The group kept moving forward. He was interested and asked, Rangaku? Something up? Oh, she said in a low voice. Oh no. I believe I understand what's wrong. When she said this, they turned to face her right. Hinamori stomped her foot and looked at her with wide eyes. I've been trying to figure it out, it's like he's taking it like a personal attack. I believe. He might think we're making fun of this new piece of information because we're not seeing him, but the person everyone here keeps trying to make him be. Hinamori's face changed into one of distress, and Rukia gave both Renji and Ichigo a sharp look. Matsumoto turned around and used all of her senses to try to figure out where Hitsugaya was. You guys go on ahead, I'll go find him, okay? Before she left, she didn't give them another chance. Hinamori stood there and watched her, still as she longed so badly to go comfort her friend too. He thought she meant something bad, though, so. It looks like Matsumoto was the right person to talk to him at this time. It's annoying. The training dummy was hit by Hitsugaya's Hiranmaru, and the blade cut cleanly through it. It's annoying. He changed his stance and then hit again. Stay in check. Don't worry. Stay level. Take deep breaths. Set rules. Go on strike, it's annoying. A punch to the head, then a quick swipe down. Not as fast as he would have liked, but clean. Not a single score that doesn't belong. Holding back. Worked on. Worked well. What a pain this was, all of it. The dummy broke down the middle as a sharp spire of ice wrapped around it. He bared his teeth and took a tighter hold on the hilt. Oh no. What's wrong with him now that 5 dummies have been used? Not good. He chose not to be here. It was way too hot. So much business had to be finished. Too much emotional baggage that isn't needed. Things he didn't want to remember were messing with his afterlife now. He had no business being here. It was meant to be over. No way was he going to remember. He shouldn't have known anything about this. It wasn't his job to do anything but live out the rest of his afterlife and then move on to whatever came next, without any more big problems like the hell they'd all been going through since Aizen came along. But nothing was ever that easy. A slow breath came out of him, and he growled as he hit the ice. The ice broke in half, making the dummy useless. We hope that no one really needed that hole. Penny for your thoughts, Taiko? He made a growl sound. He was still mad at her for keeping the incident in the back of his mind. No. Matsumoto walked forward with her hand on her hip and a frown on her face. You know I can tell something is wrong. You're feeling more stressed than usual. You haven't been this upset since Hinamori Chan was out of commission. Hitsugaya was so angry that he slashed the sword through the ice again, this time cutting off another piece. I didn't know how mad you'd be about the teasing, she said next, her voice a little more tense. I didn't mean to upset you this much. The dummy's head was cut in 2 uneven pieces by another hit that cut through the ice. It's not just that, he finally said when he didn't want to. Or, rather, it's part of the problem as a whole. Where everyone looks at you, and they see a person you aren't anymore. She sometimes knew him too well. Yes. They didn't know the person I am. I don't want to give up everything I've worked for to become the person they want me to be. That person is dead and gone. He glared at the block of ice that was slowly melting in the water. That person, Uzumaki Naruto, has been dead for more than 100 years. Even though the memories keep coming back to haunt me, I am so far away from that person. Matsumoto made a pursed lip. Taiko. They've made me sad. They have been sad about me. He let out another angry growl as he sheathed Hiranmaru. I know it's hard for them, but I'm not. There was no more abuse that the poor dummy could take. It's not fair. It's not fair at all. These accomplishments and actions are being tied to me until I have to leave for good. It's like they want to tease me about the life I lost. She reached out and put a firm hand on his shoulder. Taiko. He clenched his teeth and looked at her. What? There was a beat of silence, and then Matsumoto smiled softly at him. Okay, let's get some ice cream or another cold treat from this place. It would be great because it's so hot outside. We can also bring some back for other people. After that, we'll decide what to do next. For him, it was just something to look at. But still. Fine. Someone has to watch out for you so you don't get into trouble, I guess. He was not going to say that the distraction was good.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.